Hello, this is Britt Caswell with another example video. In this video, I'm covering example 1 from section 4-5 in the SavvasRealize Algebra 1 textbook. We are looking at how to graph a system of inequalities. Now remember, by a system, we just mean two or more inequalities at a time. So when we talk about a system, what we need to do is start by graphing both inequalities on the same graph. So I'm going to start by graphing this top one here in purple. So my y-intercept is at -2, so I come down to where -2 is on the y-axis. And then my slope, or my number in front of x, is a 1. So I'm going to rise by 1 and run by 1 repeatedly. If I can come down back this way as well, there's our line. So then we need to see if this line needs to be connected with a solid line or a dotted line. And to do that, we look at the inequality symbol. So because this inequality symbol doesn't say that it could be equal to, this would be connected with a dotted line, or a dashed line, sometimes people say it. So here's where I'm dashing my line. Sometimes I just play with the idea of just leaving it as dots. It doesn't really matter. There we go. Now remember, any point that falls on this line is not a part of the solution when we consider the inequality as a whole. And this says y is greater than all that stuff, so I would be shading this upwards this way. Now if you're taking notes, it is a lot easier to shade with colored pencils than on my PDF because my PDF overrides things. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that same graph and I'm going to graph this second inequality in orange. So my y-intercept is at 1 and my slope is -1. That means that I fall by 1 and run by 1. So I come down this way. So then we have to look to see whether or not we use a solid line or a dotted line. So we look at the inequality symbol. And so because the inequality symbol can be equal to, we're going to go ahead and use a solid line. And I'm going to do my best to draw a straight line here. You all know that the struggle's real for me, though. There we go. There's our solid line. Now, any point that lands on this solid line is a part of the solution for the orange stuff. So just be aware of that. Now, in terms of shading, it says that y is less than or equal to all this stuff. So I would shade down from the orange line. So the orange shading comes down this way. Now, when we deal with the system of equations solution is where the lines intersect usually. But since we're dealing with inequalities, what we're looking for is where the two graphs overlap. So if you notice, I shaded all of this yellow area here with both the purple and the orange. So this section here is the solution. Let's go ahead and let's try another one. So again, we just kind of graph them one at a time. So on this top one, my y-intercept is at 2, and my slope is -1. So I'm going to fall 1, run 1, over and over. So I'll have a line that looks roughly like this. And then we need to see whether it's going to be a solid line or a dotted line, so we check the inequality symbol. So because this can be equal to, this is going to be a solid line. So I'm going to do my best to draw a straight line between all of these points. So once we have that, then we need to go through and we need to shade. So this says that y is greater than or equal to all this stuff. So that means that in terms of shading, I would shade up from that line. I would shade this way. So then my second inequality goes down to -2. The slope again is -1, so I'm going down 1 and running 1. And then we need to see whether these are connected with a solid line or a dotted line, so I'm going to go ahead and check the inequality symbol. So since the inequality can't be equal to it, I'm going to use a dotted line or a dashed line. So any point that's on this line is not a solution. That's what that dashed line means. And then in terms of shading, we have y is less than all this stuff, so I would shade this way on the orange line. So there we go. So do you see how the blue and the orange don't overlap? So when you have a situation where they don't overlap ever, then you have no solution set, because the solution has to work where they overlap each other or intersect. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do another one. I'll do this top one in green. It says y is less than 2x. So the y-intercept is 0 because there's 0 being added on here. And then my slope of 2 says that I rise by 2 and run by 1. Alrighty, so then we have to see if it's a solid line or a dotted line. So because it can't be equal to for the inequality symbol, we're going to use a dotted line to connect these. There we go. So there's my dotted line. And in terms of shading, I need y is less than all that stuff, so I'm shading underneath the line, which is over here. Now for my second line, there's no x mentioned. So this y equals -3 that I'm going to graph is going to end up being a horizontal line like this. So then we have to look to see if it's a solid line or a dotted line, so we check the inequality symbol. And again, because this one doesn't have any equal to, it's going to be a dotted or dashed line. Now this says y is greater than that -3, so this would go shading upward above this red line. And again, we're looking for where these overlap, right? So the point where it overlaps, the red and the green, is all of this stuff up here. There we go. So again, this is the solution. Alright, and I think we just have one more example of this, so let's give it a shot. So our first one says y is greater than or equal to -2x plus 1. So that plus 1 is my y-intercept. And a slope of -2 means I fall by 2 and run by 1. Alrighty. So then I check for whether I'm going to do a solid line or a dotted line. So because this can be equal to it, I'm going to use a solid line. I'm going to try to draw it as straight as possible. Now in terms of shading, this says y is greater than all that stuff, so my shading would come here above the line. Like that. So then for my second inequality, my y-intercept is at 2, and my slope is 1, so I'm going to rise 1, run 1, over and over and over again. So it's going to look something like this. And then we have to see whether we need a solid line or a dotted line. So if we look at the inequality symbol, it can't be equal to. So we're going to use a dotted line or a dashed line. So it looks kind of like this. And in terms of shading for the brown line, it says that y is greater than all this stuff. So my shading would be above the line this way, like you'd see. And so now we're looking for where the two overlap, so where the purple and brown overlap. So if you notice, it kind of starts in here, and it's kind of this triangle that expands outward as we go up. Oh, my pen's not working anymore. Sometimes it's a little finicky. Oh, it's the PDF not writing anymore. Well, I don't know why it's not writing anymore, but there it is. Now it's writing. So this kind of orangey section that I shaded is all of our solution. So that is how to graph a system of inequalities. Again, it's a lot more fun when you do it with a set of colored pencils. Until next time.